Welcome everyone to our TeachMeet today on Wellbeing Strategies for Trainee Teachers and ECTs. I hope you're all having a great week so far, and also it's Friday tomorrow, so I hope you're all very much looking forward to the weekend. I know I am. So I just wanted to thank you for taking your time out this afternoon to come to this TeachMeet. We hope it's going to be very helpful for you. I'm very excited for this TeachMeet because I am with Becky, who is our wellbeing expert here at Twinkl, and she is here to share all of her wisdom and knowledge on wellbeing for you guys. So it's going to be a great one. Just to cover what we're going to be looking at today. So we're going to do a quick intro on what this session is going to be about, and then we're going to do a Q&A, and then we're going to be sharing some websites and tools that can help you with your wellbeing, and then we'll have a little bit to finish off as well. So I expect that this session will last around 40 minutes, so it'll give you some time for some questions at the end if you have anything specific that we haven't covered in the session. Right, so a little bit about me. My name's Matisha, and I was a teacher for 7 years. And throughout my time in school, I taught throughout Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. I spent 3 years, my first 3 years of teaching in Year 6, which was challenging, but very rewarding at the same time. I also have some experience in supply teaching too. So here at Twinkl, I'm part of the Trainee Teachers and ECTs team. I create all of our video content, and I support trainees and ECTs in our Facebook groups and in CPD sessions just like these, the one that we're in today. And our goal in our team is to provide you with all the support, advice, and guidance that you need to make a flying start into your career in teaching. So that's just a little bit about me. I'll now pass it over to Becky, who will introduce herself.
Thanks, Matisha. So, hello everyone. I am really thrilled to be here. I'm National Wellbeing Lead at Twinkl. I have over 20 years experience in teaching, so I vaguely remember being a trainee teacher. It was a long, long time ago. And in that time, I've had lots of different roles. So I was a drama teacher, Senko, safeguarding lead. And then I went to work in Newham as a resilience training lead. So I was working with lots of different schools on a whole school approach to mental health and wellbeing. And since then, I've done lots of different things, all kind of focused around well-being. I actually experienced burnout at the end of my mainstream teaching career. I was a Senko. It's a busy role. I found it extremely challenging, and teaching itself is hard work. And I took that as a message that I needed to change things up a bit, and have taken that on, and now work as much as I can, kind of raising profile of wellbeing for children and young people, but also for the people that are supporting them, because basically without you guys, there are no schools if we don't have any teachers. So it's really important that we're looking after you as well. So really looking forward to this evening. It's really interesting listening to the questions that people have asked, because I feel like I've lived them all. So hopefully everyone will be able to connect with what we talk about this evening.
Thank you so much, Becky. We're so happy to have you here today. I know you're going to be such an amazing help for us. So just a little bit of an introduction into the session. So we know that the early years of your teaching career can feel so overwhelming. I remember it very clearly, feeling the way I did when I was a new teacher, and even in my teacher training as well. It can be very overwhelming, very stressful. You can feel a lot of anxiety, and that's why this session that we have planned is about supporting you, your energy, your confidence, and your mental health as well. So we will be exploring the real challenges that new teachers face when they come into teaching, when they're training. We're going to discuss the anonymous wellbeing questions sent in by you. So on our social media channels, I sent out a Google form around a month ago, and I got quite a few responses on certain scenarios that some of you are currently going through in school at the moment, and maybe some things that you're worried about. So we're going to be covering a few different topics today. And we're going to be also sharing some simple and realistic self-care strategies that actually work, because we can always just say, do you know what, is going to be fine, but how do I make sure it's fine? So we're just going to be sharing lots of strategies with you, and we hope that it's going to be helpful. So if you've come to one of our TeachMeets before, this session is going to work a little bit differently. So we're going to be exploring the wellbeing questions sent in by you guys, and it's going to be in a Q&A kind of format. So I'm going to be asking the questions to Becky, and she's going to be telling us how she would best approach that situation. Becky will be sharing practical advice and strategies based on real experiences, and you'll have a chance to reflect and share at the end if you would like to. No pressure at all, but if you would like to, you can at the end of the session. So that brings me on to our first question that was sent in, and this is, I'm struggling to switch off after school. I spend my evenings overthinking lessons or worrying about what went wrong. Any tips for setting boundaries? And I'll now pass over to Becky. Sorry.
Thanks, Patricia. I felt like I could have written that one.
Me too.
Because, that was absolutely something I struggled with. It's one of those jobs, isn't it, where we do it because we care and we're passionate and we want to do well. And so, that's why we spend so much time thinking about it. And when we first go into the role, because there's so much to learn and so much to do, it can be really overwhelming. So yeah, just to say, lots of people experience this, and that doesn't make it any easier when you're in the middle of it. I think the key here is being really strict with yourself, and it is about setting yourself boundaries and having expectations. Now, I do think it's impossible to be a teacher and just do 8:30 till 3:30, unless you're some sort of magician. I don't know how you would do all of the planning, etc., around it. So we do have to expect that there's going to be some work outside of those hours. But we also need to remember that we could work forever and never have it finished. So setting some boundaries are really important. What are your time frames? So some people I know would come in early and do lots of work in the morning before school started, dependent on your home situation. Some people like to stay at school afterwards and do lots of work. Some people go home, do their bits, and then do work later on. There's no right or wrong. It's what works best for you. So there are people I know that much prefer working like between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. And that's fine. It works for them, but they're not working from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. So it's about getting those boundaries and having a really specific cutoff time, saying, right, I'm going to finish at this time, and that's what I'm focusing on. And that might mean that you have to adjust your to-do list and go, well, I'm not going to fit all of this in. These are the things I know I have to have done for tomorrow. So I'm going to focus on those, and something else will just have to wait. And making sure that you've got something to look forward to in that other time, because what I would find is if I did stop working, I would just sit there thinking, oh, I should be working, if I didn't have something planned in. So thinking about what you might want to watch on telly. I've put knitting, going for a run. I was trying to do the whole gamut of what people might be interested in, but you know what you enjoy doing. Thinking about that and building time in to do that is really important. It's amazing how quickly we can forget what we enjoy, and the fact that getting into our flow state and the things that we enjoy are really good for our mental health. And worrying about getting things wrong is really normal. If we didn't worry about getting things wrong, then we probably wouldn't be very good practitioners, because we would never go back and reflect and improve. But it is also important to remember that getting things wrong is how we learn. You think about our students, we don't expect them to come into our lessons and our children and get everything right all the time. Why would we expect that of ourselves? And it's okay to get those things wrong. So reframe it as a learning opportunity, an opportunity to do things differently next time. And really important that I still make mistakes. I still don't get everything right in the classroom. There are so many different things and factors that we are working on. You don't have a time machine. You can't go back and change it when something's gone wrong. So you have to go, right, that's happened. I know what I'm going to do differently next time, but I'm not going to dwell on what's happened there. So that's what I would say.
I completely agree with you, Becky, like completely. And I think it's really important to find what works for you, because that's not like what works for your colleague or what works for your friend who's also a teacher might not work for you. Maybe you prefer to get in early and just get your work done in the morning and then leave at the end of the school day. Or maybe you prefer to do your marking during lunch. It's absolutely fine. Whatever works for you works for you. But you should always be taking that break though, if you do, because I used to mark during lunch so I could head off after school, and that not always, but that sometimes didn't work in my favor, because then I feel like I didn't get a break. But sometimes it would, especially on a Friday when you just want to run out the door. So it would be good if you just get it all done, so you find what works for you. That's the best thing. So the next question that we got was, I get anxious before observations or drop-ins, and I can't focus properly when someone's watching me. How can I manage that stress?
Isn't it amazing that as soon as someone else is in the room, you suddenly feel completely different about teaching? And I know I do. Even today, I was running focus groups, and I had another adult in the room, and I was more cognizant of what I was saying and doing, because I was thinking of what that adult was thinking of what I was saying. Again, really normal. And I'll say that about all of the questions that we've got this evening. It does get easier with time. anyone worth their salt observing you shouldn't be looking for perfection. That's the first thing. That's just not possible. I don't believe there are any perfect lessons out there. It should be about them looking at opportunities to support you, particularly at this early stage in your career, and thinking about ways that they can help you to improve. If you've got people coming in all the time, and that can increase anxiety when you've potentially got lots of observations, people dropping in all the time, that is not right, and that is something you would need to speak to your mentor about, or your head of department about, because actually that is increasing stress. There are some really clear guidance out there for schools about how many times people should be being observed. I know it might be a little bit different for some academies, but if you're having it happen a lot and that's making you feel more stressed, then definitely speak to someone, because it's not helpful. It doesn't help you to develop and become a better teacher. It just causes challenges. But if it's happened, you're in the room and someone's come in and it's put you off your game, and you're feeling anxious, think about how you could have some sort of simple breathing technique. Not something that anyone in the room would know that you're doing, but something like the box breathing, which is really simple. I'm going to put my hand up to demonstrate it. You obviously don't need to put your hand up. You can just imagine it in your brain. But you breathe in to the side. So you're breathing in for 3, and then you hold along the top for 5, and then you breathe out for 3, and then you hold along the bottom for 5. And you just keep doing that, and just focus on the box, focus on the numbers of the breathing in and the out. And it's just about, essentially anxiety is our nervous system telling us that something's awry, that we're not comfortable with where we are. It's an innate thing that happens that we often don't have control over, and sometimes the breathing can click into what's called our parasympathetic nervous system and help us to calm down a little bit. So something like that can work. Or some people find having a mantra, or giving themselves a talking to in their head can be useful. I know what I'm doing. I've planned this lesson. I know what I'm doing. Like, this person being in the room doesn't make any difference to what I'm doing. I just need to focus on the children, focus on my lesson. And as I say, anyone worth their salt watching you is not there to make you more nervous. They're not there to catch you out doing something wrong. They are genuinely there to see what you do well and to see where they can help. And that should be the experience that you're having. And if you're not, then then you're absolutely right to be anxious, and that's something you need to escalate and speak to someone else about. It is really hard having someone else in the classroom, but I also think about it when I go into other people's classrooms. I love it as an opportunity to see what other people do and how they work, and it can be a really fantastic opportunity to learn from each other. So, seeing it in that respect as well could be helpful.
I completely agree with you, Becky. I remember I used to feel very anxious, especially when it used to be the unannounced drop-ins. If I knew it was happening and I knew they were going to be coming in, then I'd kind of be prepared for it. But it was when they would just kind of just walk in and you're just like, why are you here? That kind of feeling that you'd get. But Becky's completely right. It does get easier with time. But if you're feeling like it's happening too often, or it's making you feel some kind of way, which is not very nice, like that anxious feeling, then I think definitely talk to your mentor about it, and maybe ask, like, what are they looking for when they come in, just so you have a little bit of an idea, or maybe even ask to get a heads up next time, because that might be something that you would benefit from. I know I definitely would have benefited from a heads up most of the time. But thank you for that. Let's move on to the next question. So I've had a few difficult parents this term, and it's really knocked my confidence. How can I stop taking it personally?
So this is a really difficult one. And I have to say that at the end of my mainstream career, one of the biggest challenges was parents. And that was not because of them personally, but just because it can be, and I was in secondary as well, so we didn't necessarily have as close a working relationship as you might have had in primary. And it is really, really difficult. I guess for me, when you have the time, and it's not always easy in the moment when that parent is there kind of having a go at you, when you have the time and opportunity to step back, it is taking that opportunity to try and understand what is going on for that parent. So particularly if you have a parent where their child has additional needs and SEND, or where their child has been showing lots of behavioural challenges and difficulties, or both, try to think about what might be going on for that parent. So when I was a Senko, I used to have lots of conversations with parents who felt that their child wasn't getting the support that they needed, and I felt that they were, and that was a really difficult kind of place to meet in the middle. But I tried to reframe it and think, well, they just want what's best for their child, particularly parents of SEND children, often having to battle a lot for the support that they get for their child, and sometimes classroom teachers are the ones that get it in the neck because they're there. So I try to reframe it. They want their child to do well. They might be worried about their child. They might have had difficult experiences at school themselves, or difficult experiences with previous teachers. So I think the key is you both want the same thing. You both want that child to do well and the best. So where possible, it's taking the time to stop and listen. So, sometimes, and I know I've been guilty of this, you can get quite defensive and you can be like, oh no, I didn't do this and that hasn't happened, or this hasn't happened. Actually, just let the parent come and talk and tell you what they're worried about, tell you what their concerns are. Be curious about what they might be experiencing, what they might be hearing from their child. The story the child takes home isn't always our experience of what's happening in the classroom. You're absolutely right that you shouldn't take it personally, because it could be anyone in the classroom there. It's much more about the context for that parent, carer and the child. But they're often quite frustrated, and sometimes taking that time to just stop and listen and validate. So you don't have to agree with them, but you can validate and say, I can see why you would be frustrated if you think X, Y, and Z is happening, or if you're worried about your child, or I can understand that would be frustrating. And sometimes validation can take you a long way to meeting someone in the middle, rather than, no, you're wrong and this is my view. But if this is happening frequently, make sure that you are speaking to your mentor and your head of department. It may be that actually in the future, for some of these parents, if they're being particularly difficult, someone else needs to have that conversation with them. You see these signs all the time in shops. Our staff have the right not to be spoken to rudely, or what have you, whatever they say. Teaching is exactly the same. So parents don't have a right to be rude to you. They don't have the right to be abusive or offensive anywhere. They don't have the right to raise their voices to you. So if that is happening regularly, that is something that you need to escalate. It's something that you need to share with someone else and say, actually, I don't feel comfortable speaking either with this parent alone or this parent at all. I need someone else to support me with this. And a reminder that you take it personally because you care. Again, a little bit like all the other things we talked about. If you didn't take it personally, and you were like, oh, I don't really care, whatever, they can say whatever they want, it would suggest to me that you weren't maybe as passionate about the role as you could be. You want to do a good job. No one likes to hear from anyone that they're not doing what this other person wants them to do. But, you can't meet every single person's expectations all the time. Sometimes it's about taking that step back, listening to what they're saying. And if it gets too far, speaking to your mentor, your head of department, and remembering you focus on what the child needs, your professional judgment, and understanding where the frustration from the parents. Often it comes from a misunderstanding or a not being really clear on what's happening in the classroom.
Yeah, actually, this question brought back a lot of memories for me, because when I was teaching, I remember having one in particular very difficult parent, and I'd kind of just really feel nervous and anxious as it approached home time, because I knew she'd be there and she would have to say something to me all the time. So what I did is I actually spoke to the previous class teacher and said, was this the same situation you had? And that teacher made me feel so much better, because she said, this is just the way the parent is. Okay, yes. It's very, very committed to knowing everything that's going on in the classroom. Don't worry, it's not you. And sometimes just speaking to someone else does make you feel a lot better. And also, I have had a couple of times where I did need to get SLT involved and just be like, what, I don't feel comfortable talking to this parent alone. So is it okay if you sit on the meeting, or is it okay if I keep you in the email chain, just so you can see the way I'm communicating and what's being said to me? So it's just that you have that kind of backup, that you've got someone on your side as well. So don't be afraid to get leadership involved if you feel like it's becoming a kind of unmanageable situation.
Yeah, and also very quickly going back, like keep your boundaries as well. I mean, sometimes different in primary to secondary, but I would get emails at all sorts of times at night from parents, and you kind of expect a response by the next day. Most schools have a kind of, most schools should have a policy on replying to emails. I don't feel like you have to reply to those things straight away. Take some time, get someone else to have a read of it. Certainly don't be answering emails outside of working hours. They can wait. Basically, they would for any other business. And sometimes I think parents can think you're the teacher, so you have to be there for them there and then, and you don't necessarily.
Yeah, it's not a 24/7 hour job. Right. So our next question is, sometimes I compare myself to other trainees or ECTs who seem more confident or further ahead. How can I stop feeling like I'm not good enough?
I think the phrase is comparison is the thief. Oh, yeah, right on. Comparison is the thief of joy. It's so easy to get into that comparison spiral. We mentioned it earlier, looking at a colleague and going, oh, but they're always in first thing in the morning and I'm not, or they're always here really late and I'm not. And we can imagine that means that they're doing a better job than us. And when I do quite a lot of coaching and for young people and staff, and what I often will ask people to say is, where is your evidence that you're not as good as that trainee or ECT, or where's your evidence that they are further ahead? Because often when you really drill down to it, there isn't any evidence. It's just that you are panicking and you're seeing other things that other people are doing, and think that, well, they must be better than me. But actually there's lots of things that you will be doing that other people will be looking at going, oh wow, that is brilliant, I wish I was doing that as well. So this was something that my coach I had last year introduced me to, and it's a to-do list. So instead of your to-do list, you're going to write a to-do list. And it sounds daft, I know. Some of you will be sitting there going, oh, this is a rubbish idea, but I promise you it does work, because I've done it myself. And the to-do list is taking time to actually write down things that you've done well, your achievements. Maybe you had an email from a parent that said, oh, thank you so much for your help with X, Y, and Z. Or a colleague has said, oh, that was a brilliant assembly, or anything. Write it down. Or you just feel like that lesson went really well. Write it down. Because often the act of writing it down kind of cements it more in our heads. As human beings, we are predisposed to look at the negative. It's what kept us alive when we were hunter-gatherers. So we tend to focus on the dangers and the negatives in order to keep ourselves safe. But unfortunately, we still do that now in 2025, when there aren't as many dangers as there would have been. So we are predisposed to look at the negative. So we almost have to train our brain to focus back on the positive. It's a really common trait in teachers, and I'm not sure what it is, but I think it's probably about the passion we have for the role. We want to be able to do it brilliantly, the pressure we maybe feel. So making sure that we are keeping that regular list of what we do, talking to your mentor, talking to other people. I know we've said with the classroom, you get nervous of being observed, but actually getting other people into your classroom to observe and saying, please tell me what I'm doing well, tell me my strengths, and believe them. People won't say it just for the sake of it. Self-doubt absolutely isn't evidence. It's natural. And again, it will sound like a broken record. I do think it will get easier, but I have to say, even after 20 years, I still compare myself to the other education leads at Twinkl when they're doing something fabulous on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh gosh, why aren't I doing that? I think there is a natural part of it, but it's about how far you let it go, get into your head, basically. So it's about also having a word with yourself and saying, they're not me, I'm doing something different. Kind of stay in your lane and focus on what you're doing.
Yeah, completely. Like, I just remember being in this boat, especially when I was in my teacher training. There were a couple of people that just seemed to be doing amazingly. And I was just like, well, why can't I do that? Why don't I have those ideas? Like, I don't know. And I just started doubting myself, like, am I doing the right thing? Should I be going into teaching? I don't seem as good as them. And then I realized that it was just that I was just being silly, because it was just, it's not always that you look at someone else, you don't know what they're going through as well. I always believe that everyone is fighting an unknown battle that we know nothing about. Like, we can't just compare what we see face value, like, oh, okay, that was really good, that they're better than me. Like, that's completely the wrong way of thinking about it. And I think you are always progressing each and every day in your training. When you're an ECT, you're progressing. Even when your ECT induction is over, every time you teach a lesson, you'll be getting better and better and better, and you'll become the teacher that you're going to become. So do not compare yourself right now, because you're still learning. And that's something that I like, it took me a while to understand, but eventually I did, and I hope you guys do as well. So I hope that helps. Okay, so the next question is, what's a realistic work-life balance for a trainee teacher? Everyone says look after yourself, but how?
Now, this is where I suggest you don't learn from me when I was teaching, because I was terrible, and that's why I ended up kind of leaving mainstream teaching through burnout, because I was working till 11 midnight every night. I was answering emails from parents, and I didn't switch off at the weekends, and it just had a really negative impact on me. So it is about setting those firm boundaries, and it does depend on everyone's circumstances. Everyone has different kind of contexts, so you need to think about what works best for you. But I would say things like, no one should be working all weekend. So you should have, I mean, at the beginning, it feels like there's so much you need to do. In your first couple of years, you're planning things from scratch, aren't you? And then you have schemes that you know that you can pick up and deliver, and you're not necessarily planning in as minutiae detail, so you don't need as much time. But I would suggest things like having at least one day clear at the weekend of work, preferably a whole afternoon of one day, and another day, really clear of work, that you're not doing anything, because the quality of what you will then do for the following week is much better. And as I said earlier, you could work, well, I did work every evening, all weekend. The work never stops. It will always be there. So it is about saying, okay, I'm only going to work till a certain time at the evening. I am only going to do one day at the weekend, or potentially just a morning. There is always something you can do. Something I've found that works really well is something called the Eisenhower Matrix. If you've never heard of it before, you can Google it. There's a great YouTube video on it that explains it. And it's basically 4 sections, and it's a way of prioritizing your to-do list. It's about thinking about what your priorities are. So you've got things that are urgent and important. They're the things you're going to prioritize. You've got things that are not important, not urgent. You're probably going to ditch them as quickly as you can. There are things that you might be able to delegate. There are things that you need to do but can leave. So if you've got to the end of the day and you're feeling really exhausted and you just really want to go home and put your feet up and do nothing, if you have planned all your lessons for the next day, go home and put your feet up and do nothing. Take that time. You need to be prepared for the lessons you've got the next day, I would say, and you can't do that forever. You need to get ahead of yourselves, but not feeling like I have to work and I have to do this. If I'm not working in the evenings, I used to feel really guilty if I didn't do any work in the evenings, and that's just ridiculous. I just think now that is just absolutely ridiculous. And I had friends and colleagues who weren't like that. So I had colleagues who were so much more boundaried than me and organized and stayed on top of things. And it is a practice. It is something you have to do over and over again and get into a routine on it. But, be really clear on giving yourself what you need. And I think that's the crucial part. Work-life balance will look different for everyone. So what you need to wind down properly, making sure you're not working up until bedtime, so you've got at least an hour or so before you go to try and go to sleep, where you've not done anything, gone for a walk, perhaps not at night, but I'm usually walking the dogs, or stopped and watch your favorite program. Is everyone going to be watching Celebrity Traitors tonight? I will be. Doing all of those things that will make you feel like you've wound down. The hardest thing about work-life balance is when you're working up until the final time you go to bed, and then you're getting up in the morning and you're working, and then you just don't ever give your brain time to switch off. It's hard though, really hard.
Yeah, it is really hard. Like, I remember I had a year group partner who didn't want to do any work after school, which was great, but she wanted to work on the weekends, which means that I would be getting endless amount of emails about planning and stuff on the weekend, and she expected me to be checking my emails on the weekend, which is something that I didn't want to do. So if you have someone like that, it's worth having a conversation that, you know, this doesn't work for me. Like, I know this works for you, but this doesn't work for me. So could we find a balance between us as well? Because sometimes you have no control if your year group partner is sending you planning on a Sunday night, and for the following Monday, you know, you're well within your rights to say, you know what, like, that doesn't work for me, and you need to get it to me earlier. And I know it's hard to have those kinds of conversations, especially so early on in your career. But again, it's just like setting those boundaries. If it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you. And you have to have that conversation. Like, you know, if it's a difficult one, then speak to your mentor. If it is your mentor that's doing this, then that's another situation where you can talk to someone else. Like, maybe if you're training, talk to someone at your uni or on your course. That's, you know, how can I have this conversation with my mentor to say that emailing at this time is not suitable for me, or sending me something is not suitable for me. So, you know,
we probably didn't put it in the follow-up email, but I did a whole thing on navigating difficult conversations about how to have those conversations. So it's just, having those confidence, and just, you know, it's such a brilliant opportunity for you to do this now, because if you start it now, it's going to make such a difference.
100%. It's so important. Right, so the next question is, sometimes I feel like I'm pretending to be a teacher. How do I deal with imposter syndrome?
Well, I mean, I still feel like I'm an imposter, so I'm not sure if I'm the best person to help with this. But what I would say is try and identify where it comes from. What is it that is making you feel like an imposter? Is it the way that people around you might be treating you? Is there a lack of support from mentors? Because if you've got a good mentor, you shouldn't feel like an imposter, because they should be doing things that are reinforcing how well you're doing, giving you feedback, giving you reflection time. You know, time to reflect on practice is one of the things that I think is missing from education hugely. And it's really important for you to have that time to reflect on what you've been teaching, how it's been landing, what you might need to do differently next time. The problem with imposter syndrome is it's often not a problem with you. It's often a problem with the organization. Like I say, that there aren't the systems in place to support you, like the, you know, quality time with your mentor, not just here you're teaching that lesson, off you go, you know, performance management processes, reflective practice. So, you know, that opportunity, like I've said, of thinking about who you are, what you're doing, what you're delivering, and how it went. Those are the structures that will build your confidence. Those are the things that will hopefully remove those kind of imposter feelings. And that's where it's a bit of a challenge, because it's sometimes the organisation that needs that. Thinking about who's in your team, who are your cheerleaders, who are the colleagues, who you've got other ICT and ECTs and trainees in the school that you can connect with. Trying to talk through with them and reflect can be really important. But you know, I've said this again, lots of these things that are coming through this evening come from a place of you wanting to do well and that you wanted to be successful, and that is something you should embrace. If anyone ever tells you that they know it all and have that teaching sorted, then they're lying, or they are delusional. Often the people that think they've got it sorted are the ones that have the, you know, are not as successful as others. So so trying to think about where is this coming from, and having that time to think about it.
Yeah, completely agree with everything you said, Becky. And I feel like this feeling of imposter syndrome, it's not only in teaching. I know a lot of people that are in completely different jobs that also feel like an imposter as well. It's just it's a really difficult one, but I think it's just remembering that there isn't any teacher out there that has completely everything figured out. Even if they seem like they do, they don't. So it's just, you know, you always have that one teacher in the school that just like seems like they're just on top of everything.
And they never have any problems with the children that misbehave.
Or you know, someone covers your class and they're like, oh well, they never act like that for me. Like, you know, you get that kind of person all the time. Like, there's something else going on for sure.
You don't need that energy in your lives.
No, definitely not. Right, so our next question is, I'm worried my mentor SLT will think I'm not committed if I leave school on time. How can I set boundaries respectfully?
This is probably one of the easiest questions of all. It's none of their business. Honestly, it's none of their business. True. You are leaving on time, so you're not leaving before the school is finished. You're not leaving before a meeting. If it's not directed time, none of their business. If you are getting your work done and you are doing what you need to be doing, then they have no say on what you do with your other time. That is literally your time. So I think it's really dangerous, this presenteeism that we can have in education, where this idea that if you have to be in school for, you know, like 7:30 till 4:30, or you're not doing your job properly. Absolute rubbish. I used to work with a teacher that came in just before form time, left at 3:05, and the bell went at 3:00. He was a brilliant teacher, got amazing results. He got stuff done. It's so important not to get into that mindset, and if your mentor or SOT are picking you up on it, then they need to have a word with themselves, because it's completely inappropriate. And you know, you can manage your time. You're a grown up. Everyone will have different circumstances. You might need to get home for children. You might need to get home to look after parents. You might just need to get home because you need to get home. It's none of their business. And so they set boundaries respectfully. You can say, well, I've finished my work and I am going home, and I'm going to do what I need to do. If they've got a specific problem with your practice, or that you're not marking, or you've not got lessons planned, that's something. But they can't just come and say to you, why are you leaving at X, Y, and Z time?
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, just because you see everyone else that's might be there because they're behind on their marking and they might be staying until God knows what time, like 5:00, 5:30, doesn't mean you need to be there as well. Like if you've done what you needed to do for the day, off you go and enjoy the rest of your day. Like, it's just, there's no need to even explain why you're leaving on time. You don't even need to give anyone an explanation. Like, I remember I had one colleague that would feel so guilty that she'd be making up that she had doctor's appointments and that sort of thing. And I'm like, you don't need to do that. If you've done your work, just go. It's just, and no one's got a right to say anything to you.
We can often get a martyr complex in the teachers, like who works the longest hours, who's marked the most books, who's had the most, and it's not healthy, it's not helpful. And if you can get out of that habit as early as possible, then brilliant.
Yeah, it's so important. Okay, the next question is, how can I manage anxiety on teaching days when I wake up already feeling panicked?
Oh, this is really, really tough. And I think, first thing to acknowledge is that everyone experiences anxiety at some point, at some time. It's a really normal thing for humans to experience. It's natural. It's part of our development. The key is to think about how long you've been experiencing it, and if it's impacting your kind of day-to-day well-being. So one of the first things is to try and take some time out to think about what is causing the panic. So if it's as you're driving in, is it particular days? Is it a particular class, a particular subject you're having to deliver? Is it because you're working with a particular person? And if you can't pin it down to one thing, and it's loads of different things, there's an activity that you can do, which is really simple, called the circles of control activity, which is essentially you can draw 3 circles on a piece of paper, or just do it in your head, whatever, and think about all the things that are playing on your mind, because quite often anxiety comes from overwhelm. I certainly know it does for me. In the middle circle is your circle of control. Those are the things that you can control. So that's your marking, that's your lesson planning, that's how you deliver the lesson, that's how you share the data that you need to share, the reports you're writing, and how you teach your lesson. Those sorts of things are the things that you can directly control. We've then got the circles of influence. I should have written these down so I definitely remember them. Circle of influence is next. So those are the things that you can have a bit of control over, but not 100%. You can only influence them. So that's like children in your class, their behavior. You can only influence that by your behavior. You can't fully control it. Parents, like we've already talked about, your colleagues' behavior, some of those things are things that we can influence maybe by what we do, but we can't fully control it. And then the outside are in the circle of interest. So things like Ofsted coming in, the curriculum and assessment review, which has just happened, anything that's kind of external that might influence and impact us, but we can't do anything about it, they go into that outside circle of interest. So what we then try and do is really focus on that circle of control. What can I do about my current situation? What can I change? And if you are still feeling overwhelmed by all those things on the outside, that's really is a conversation to be having with your mentor, your line manager, someone you feel confident speaking to, because I know that's not always the same person. If it's happening regularly, think about some lifestyle things. Are you sleeping well enough? Are you eating well enough? Are you drinking well enough? Are you connecting with people outside of work? If you're just 24/7 teaching, you're either planning or marking or actually doing the job, you're not giving yourself enough time to relax. That will impact your well-being. That can cause anxiety. So thinking about those things. But if they're work-related factors, so if you feel like you've got deadlines lining up, if your workload is not feasible, if there are real challenges in the classroom, what can you do? Who can you speak to? Who can you tell? And as early as you can, say, look, I am struggling with anxiety. I'm feeling this in the morning. I believe that X, Y, and Z are things that are impacting it. And that can be a really tough conversation as well. But actually, it's something you need to do. There are some external organisations. I know we're sharing them at the end, but education support is a counselling service that you can contact. You can go to your GP and speak to them. But don't just ignore it, would be my question. Don't be ashamed of it. I've had anxiety all for the last 20 years, and it's, you know, been a real challenge to kind of get to a place where I can manage it. And I don't always manage that, but not talking about it and not speaking to people about it definitely won't do anything.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. I had anxiety as well when I was teaching, and I found that sometimes in teaching, especially in the early days, you kind of just don't want to ask for help because you're worried that the people around you might think that you're struggling or not managing, and it's okay. Like, teachers understand teachers. We've all been in this boat. So if you are struggling with something, whether that's the behavior of a certain child in your class, or whether it's a parent that's being difficult, or whether it's just your workload, there's just too much going on, then talk to someone about it, ask for help. Most of the time, schools are there and the staff will help you. They know, like, you know, if you need an extra pair of hands in the classroom, they will, because you've gone out of your way to ask for that help, they will help you. So it's just really important that you have those conversations and don't just struggle and suffer in silence. It's really important that you don't do that. So just moving on to the next question, we do have just 2 questions left, and then we'll be sharing some resources. So I think we're well within time. So the next question we've got is, how can I rebuild confidence after a disagreement with my mentor?
That's a really hard one, isn't it? Particularly as they're the person that you are, you know, potentially having that conversation with, and it's really difficult to give specific advice without knowing the details. So one thing I have learned over the years is that I won't always agree with everyone. And I think that's an important thing. Even your mentor, like, they may be really experienced, but they're, you know, you may have a disagreement, and that's absolutely fine and actually really healthy as well. Whilst there are lots of must-dos in education, a lot of it is subjective, you know, so you may believe that an approach is the best, your mentor may believe differently, and you don't always have to agree on everything. And at some point you may just have to agree to disagree, as long as it's not a fundamental, like, safeguarding issue, or, you know, if it's something like they are suggesting that you're not going to pass your training year or your ECT year, then you're going to need to get someone else involved. You might need mediation to kind of support you with that. But rebuilding your confidence is about not feeling like you have to decide whether you were right or wrong in a scenario. You've disagreed, you know, you don't necessarily have to score points and be the winner of the situation or not. Just, you've disagreed. Can you agree to disagree? Is it affecting your day-to-day role? Because if your mentor is a good mentor, you'll have a disagreement. They won't treat you any differently. It shouldn't then continue on. And if it does, then they aren't fulfilling their mentoring role properly. So a tough one without knowing the exact details, but thinking about, can I do my day-to-day job after this disagreement? Can we just agree to disagree? And I'm not going to agree with everyone.
Yeah, completely agree with that. It's just yeah, it's normal. Like, you can't just agree with everything that everyone says, especially if you feel quite strongly about something. But again, hopefully it will be something that you can move past quite well, hopefully. Okay, this is the last question that we've got. So there's one child in my class whose behavior is really challenging. It's starting to affect my confidence and mood. How can I stop taking it personally?
I feel like we almost need a whole TeachMeet just for this question.
I know.
It's really, really difficult. And we're probably not going to do it justice in the last few minutes that we have. But one thing to remember is a child's behaviour is absolutely influenced by so many different environmental factors, contextual factors, what's just happened in the playground, all those different things will influence a child's behaviour. And if you think back to those circles of control, much of it is out of your control. It is very rare, I think, that a child will take against you personally. In the same way when Matisha was saying about checking with other staff about parents, you'll very often find that this young person or this child will behave in a similar way with other teachers as well. So it's not a you thing. It's something that they are finding challenging, apart from that one teacher who says, oh, they never do that for me, but we ignore that one. I would think about using your curiosity, thinking about, we've heard it all before, all behavior is communication. What is this child trying to communicate to me with this behavior? What can I actually control? What can I do differently? Is there anything that I can do differently? And sometimes that's a difficult reflection, isn't it? Like maybe I am using language that is triggering them. Maybe I'm standing over them or raising my voice too much, or maybe I any number of different things. That doesn't make you a bad teacher. That just means that sometimes we have to reflect and think about what can I do differently. But equally, there are some points at which you might need some support from someone else, that actually this goes beyond. Maybe they've got send needs, maybe they've experienced trauma, maybe they've got things that have happened to them that make it almost impossible for them to be in the classroom. That is not a you problem. If you are working in a trauma-informed way, if you're taking their send needs into account, adapting as best you can, so it won't be a you thing. You just need to then maybe get some support from someone else. And also, like we said earlier, this young child might be presenting you with difficulties, but think about all the other young people that aren't. Think about all the other young people who you're getting on well with. If it was a you problem, then they'd all be kicking off, wouldn't they? They'd all be causing problems, but they're not. I don't imagine any of you have got classes where all of them are happening. So, and I'm not saying the problem is with the child, I'm saying the problem is with the context for the child. So something is going on for that child. We need to think about what that is, and you might need to get some extra help in, some support to understand what is going on, thinking about how you might be able to adapt your approach, asking for help. So yeah, that is a biggie, but you're probably doing a brilliant job. It's not easy, when a child has additional needs, whether they're emotional or educational, it can be really difficult in the classroom, and it is really difficult not to take it personally. But again, that's because you care, and that's because you want to do a good job. It's more often than not, it is just about getting some extra support and thinking about who else do I need to get into this conversation about this. Is that about speaking to the parents, carers? Is it about speaking to another teacher, the Senko, the pastoral lead, whoever it might be in your school? Who else needs to be involved in this conversation? It can feel really isolating when you're in the classroom with a young person that's struggling. So trying to get a team around you to support them.
Yeah, 100%. I remember just every year I would have a different class, of course, and it would just be one child in that class that would just make it really, really difficult for me. But it's just, what you need to remember is that it's not you, and it's like you need to not take it personally. That, again, like Becky said, I'm just going to say that it's the same thing, really. It's just there's so many outside factors that could be affecting why that particular child is misbehaving. So it's not something that's personal towards you. And again, just speaking to previous class teachers, previous members of staff that know that child, they'll know what strategies have worked in the past or what doesn't work. And, just kind of getting a bit of knowledge in that sense can really help in terms of thinking of what strategies you might use with that child. So again, it's just, just try and not take it personally. I know it's hard because, you'd go home at the end of the day and you just think, God, I did everything wrong today. It seemed like I did everything wrong, but that's completely not the case. So that brings us to the end of the questions. But we did have one last slide that we wanted to share with you, where we've got some wellbeing resources that might be what you need and might be helpful towards for you. So we've got the education support text line here. We've got the Wellbeing Support Pack for trainee teachers and ECTs. So this is something that's really helpful. In this resource pack, you'll find lots of different resources that can help you with your well-being as well. You've got Mind, you've got Anna Freud, and you've also got just a reminder that most schools and trusts will have access to an employee assistance program as well. Becky, was there anything you wanted to add to this slide? Because I know some of these were your suggestions.
No, not at all. Only that I did access the employee assistance program when I was at school and did get some great counselling from it. And none of it ever went back to the school. So it's really worth exploring, because counselling is expensive, isn't it? So it's worth looking at and seeing if that's something you can.
One thing I actually forgot that I wanted to put down here is actually, if you're part of a union as well, if you've got a certain situation that you're going through and you're really struggling to get help within school, sometimes going to your union and getting advice through there, even if you don't take anything further, just getting a extra bit of like advice and just maybe a bit of clarification on something you're not sure about, a union is always a good shout. So if you haven't joined a union, it might be a good one, good thing to do, especially at this point. You can normally get a few discounts, I think, as a trainee teacher as well, or sometimes it might be free. I'm not too sure, don't quite know that, but just double check. And yeah, so that brings us to the end of the session. Really hope it was helpful.